Gaming Bolt presents 15 boss fight tropes that aren't disappearing anytime soon. Every boss has a certain set of mechanics and traits that define it. This goes beyond every boss in a From Software title being classified as hard. You could break these down into tropes which have been part of boss fights since the beginning. They're not disappearing anytime soon, so let's go through 15 such tropes. It's also important to note that we're not outright criticizing all of these, just a few, as much as pointing them out. Bullet sponges. The Division was infamous for having even regular enemies with too much health. Destiny's first year was roundly criticized for bosses with huge HP pools but nothing by the way of tactics. While it can feel extremely liberating to one-shot epic behemoths when you're strong enough, it sucks when that's their only claim to fame. Then again, it does provide time for compelling conversation topics about the weather, your teammates' interests, and also, how much health does this yokel even have? Glowing weak spots. How many times have you been frustrated at not being able to figure out a boss's weakness? Well, here's an even more insulting option, when a game just outright points to a weak spot and asks you to empty bullets into it. Games like Shadow of the Colossus are the exception since you need to navigate and expose weak points to do massive damage. But the point is that highly obvious glowing spots that are a boss's only weakness are very played out. Endless mobs. It's one thing to have an intelligent boss with tactics rely on his goons. It's another thing entirely when the goons are just there to annoy you and never stop coming while adding nothing to the fight. Again, exceptions exist, like some raids in World of Warcraft where the enemies are either part of the solution or there to obstruct you en route to the solution, so it's not all meaningless. QTE boss battles. It was pretty sweet when Leon and Krauser engaged in that knife battle in Resident Evil 4. Likewise with all of those QTE finisher sequences in the God of War series, since their actual fights happened beforehand. However, with so many years of QTEs shoehorned into boss battle sequences, it's a little overkill at this point. At least it makes some fights look cool. Cutscenes. Games have narratives to move along, especially during boss battles. In some cases, the cutscenes that define certain conflicts are included in the middle, which is fine for a one-time watch, but if you can't skip it on your second playthrough, then it makes replaying said fight annoying. An approach like Bloodborne, where the cutscenes only appear the first time you fight a boss and never again, would be ideal. Invincible bosses. See that boss? You can't hurt him, like at all. You'll have to look around the boss room for a solution, maybe throwing charges at Axis to bring down his shield. Still, where do all of these bosses shop for the technology to be practically invincible from the outset? We do suppose it's better than the boss having health in the millions and your piddly damage being worth nothing. Bosses healing. How many times have you fought a boss only to see him heal up and undo all of your hard work? There are certainly ways that this can add to the fight though. Perhaps you're being too passive and the boss is encouraging you to get close. Perhaps two bosses are healing each other when one goes down, thus necessitating their simultaneous defeat. Still, seeing that health bar pop back up like nothing happened can be frustrating at times. Elemental weakness. Persona, Pokemon, and Golden Sun fans can attest to this one. Several enemies and bosses are often weak to certain elements and types of attacks. Though it's probably older than entire genres at this point, it's still kind of fun to manage your Jin, Persona, and what have you to properly defeat a boss. Grab attacks. But when a boss grabs you and bites you or smashes your face in, it inspires nothing but seething hatred, mostly because in games like Bloodborne or Dark Souls, it's often your own mistake. You got too close to the boss, now suffer the consequences. Again though, the fact that one grab attack can pretty much deplete all of your health is a real personal hate. Level requirements. We're a bit torn on this one. On one hand, the level requirements on bosses, as long as they're not too hard and fast, do a good job of telling you how much more you need to level up. This then prompts you to explore the world, complete quests, and whatnot. On the other hand, certain bosses may stick to the requirement and be absolutely impossible to beat unless you're the right level. Looking at you, Culex. Again, it's a toss-up. Insta-kill attacks. You thought being grabbed and taking large amounts of damage was bad. Insta-kill attacks or bosses who can simply one-shot you are worse. If you don't know what's coming, you're dead. If you know what's coming but do a terrible job of avoiding it, you're dead. There aren't a whole lot of games that throw bosses with one-hit kills, but those that do clearly like watching us suffer. Rain of projectiles. No, we're not talking about games like Nier Automata, where aspects like bullet hell are actually a part of the experience. Some games, again, see Destiny and The Division, seem content to toss tons of projectiles your way. The solution? hide, camp, and generally hang back while whittling down the boss. Both games have made strides in changing this, but it doesn't help that each projectile does so much damage. Cycle of convoluted mechanics. A good fight with some clever mechanics is certainly appreciated, especially if it's more than just shoot here to solve all of your problems. Still, it's funny how many raid encounters in MMOs can boil down to do this thing, then another thing, now hurt the boss, rinse, repeat. Again, this isn't a complaint, it's more meant to emphasize timing if nothing else. Enraged Timer. Here's a real complaint though, enraged timers. Killing the boss without knowing exactly what to do is one thing. Throwing a timer into the mix, especially one that's not super obvious all of the time, can be even more frustrating. If you don't destroy the boss in, say, 2 minutes, then everyone dies and you restart. Again, this concept is almost exclusive to MMOs, and while adding to the tension, it can be pretty annoying when your group isn't nearly fast enough or needs more time to just practice. Temporary invincibility. Ever had to stun a boss, wail on it for a bit, and then wait for it to get back up? Sure, you could keep smacking them, but they have temporary invincibility. This is kind of like invincibility frames in games like Monster Hunter or Dark Souls, except for the boss alone and even more bullshitty. So do your damage, let the boss get up, and continue the infernal dance. And that'll be about it for this one. If you guys like what we're doing at Gaming Bolt, please consider subscribing to our channel, and I'll see you guys on the next video.